I like football because it's a great thing to do on the weekends, you know.
I just love the game of football.
Because I like hanging out with my friends and going to all the games.
It's pretty much part of the culture. It's one of my favorite things. That's why I moved in there. My brothers lived there for a couple of years. Kind of just seeing the atmosphere.
Yeah, I like watching football because it's something to do. It's a good community sport, brings people together.
It's a great thing to do on the weekends, you know, get everyone together, and great to root for your own school spirit.
I played for 10 years in high school, middle school, for a lot of my time as a kid. And also just love the sport as well. It's very physical, it's very fast-paced to me, and I enjoy the professionalism of it.
Did you know that concussions are a problem in the sport? And did you know that concussions are a problem in the sport? Now, did you know that concussions are a problem in the sport?
Do I know that what?
Concussions. And do you know that concussions are a pretty big problem in the sport? That's our next question. Did you know concussions are a pretty big problem in the sport?
I did know that concussions were an issue in football.
You know, once you get onto the NFL, in it for many years, has a tendency to, you know, ruin your brain cells a little bit.
I see some big hits, and I'm like, dang, that person's definitely got a concussion, or like, they cannot be all right in the head right now. Yes, I'm actually well aware of a lot of the concussion protocols that are in place for both the NFL and for college football. It is an issue. People do need to spend a little bit more time focusing on it.
Yes, I do know that concussions are a problem. And I, not being a physician or anything, I don't know what to do about that. And it's a shame that anybody has to get hurt playing any game.
Yeah, I understand that's a really big problem, but I mean, to be fair, people getting paid bunches of money to play a game.
I have mixed feelings. I think part of it is I know that certain programs could do more to prevent it, but I'm not fully aware of the extent that they go through to ensure that it doesn't happen. So I'm not particularly opposed to watching football because of it. So
I did know that concussions are a problem in sport. I actually had a couple growing up playing football, and you see a lot of research about it today. I know the NFL is having a lot of lawsuits thrown against them, and former players are noticing the effects of it, so I've definitely heard about it.
Speaking of traumatic brain injury, can you briefly tell us what traumatic brain injury is and how or in what way does it affect the brain and the body?
Okay, so traumatic brain injury is a spectrum of disorders. So it might be an injury that is very, very mild, a single hit to the head, say in an older person who falls, or an athlete whose head hits the ground, or another player. Let's say a person falls. Let's say we have a person who the back of their head hits the ground. What happens is the back of the head gets injured, of course, but that's not the end of the injury. That brain, which is basically floating in fluid, which we call cerebrospinal fluid, when the head hits the back, it bounces forward and can even bounce several times. So you'll have injury, what we call coup contra coup injury, injury on opposite sides of the head. Same thing if you hit on the side, then that brain is going to bounce back and forth. And so that can cause swelling. It can cause blood vessels to rupture, and there can actually be bleeds, and it can cause death of cells in either of the areas that get injured. And then clearly if something penetrates the brain, we have a focal injury where the penetration occurs. And then here's the scary part. The injury doesn't stop at the moment of the impact. The injury spreads with time. I think what's more recently been recognized is the impact of milder brain injuries, the impact of what we call concussion, that someone might not even lose consciousness, but their brain can still be affected. I think that's the thing that we're recognizing more and more in recently. The other thing that has gotten, I think, much more attention, appropriately so, is the impact of repetitive concussion. So one mild concussion might be able to heal from that and be fine. But if you take a second one, particularly a second one within a couple of weeks of the first, then it's not just additive injury, it's actually synergistic, where both of them together are worse than either one of the initial injuries. And so that's a very new concept that I think we're only now appreciating. So if the patient doesn't recognize the symptoms, it will go unreported. But unfortunately, even sometimes when patients do recognize the symptoms of mild brain injury or concussion, fogginess, maybe a little bit of confusion, maybe some visual problems, more headaches than usual, depression is definitely one that is very common in milder forms of head injury. Often patients don't report those either. And this is a big problem, particularly in sports. Athletes don't want to be pulled from play, so they don't report it. Or they play down the symptoms, and then occasionally you've got the coach that says shake it off because you just got your bell rung, right? Getting your bell rung, so to speak, is often a concussion. And even if doesn't rise to the level of concussion, I worry about the next time it happens and the next time it happens and what the cumulative effect of those things are. So I really do worry about underreporting and well, there's nothing we can do about it anyway. Well, pulling them from play is what we absolutely must be doing about it. And so the awareness of what these symptoms are, even when they seem mild, is very, very important. Severe traumatic brain injury is very, very hard to treat. Severe traumatic brain injury, people can be in comas for the rest of their life, right? Severe traumatic brain injury can have severe motor disturbances, so where people are wheelchair or bound or bedridden. Depression is a major problem in actually all forms of traumatic brain injury, from mild to severe. Depression is the single most common poor outcome of all forms of traumatic brain injury. And then there are 100,000 people a year that die from traumatic brain injury. So it's a real problem. 1.5 million people every year sustain some form of traumatic brain injury. So